I wake up from this instance strapped butt naked to a board, and I'm like, what's going on?
Why are you naked?
They cut all my clothes
cut all
off.
your clothes
Right,
off.
They cut all my clothes off.
Are you on your back or your stomach?
I was on my back.
Millie makes songs, hey, I made this one. Jerry builds bikes and they go real fast. They're mental defectives.
Welcome to the Mental Defectives podcast, a show where we interview interesting individuals with a focus on addiction and mental health. I'm your host, Milligram. That's Millie if you know me, Mr. Graham if you know me. Joined, as always, by the Hotel California of Harleys, the gearhead with the heart of gold. I know, right?
Nice.
It's Mr. Jerry with a G.
Glad to be here.
And today...
Hold on. Hit that like and subscribe button if you dig what we do.
Mental Defectives podcast, wherever you get your social media, we're there. Because today we have a very, very special guest. He's a sober biker who doesn't give an F about S, but that never keeps him from a good poker run or barbecue. He's a husband and a dog father who's not too cool for Legos. Please welcome Ellis. Ellis, how's it going?
It's good. How are we doing today?
Good, man. Appreciate you making the drive down here, almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
It might be a podcast first.
Yeah.
Might be a record.
Yeah.
Ellis, where are you from?
Well, I'm originally from Akron. I was born in New Philly, but moved to Akron soon as I was 1 year old, so I don't really remember New Philly, but yeah, born and raised in Akron.
Hell yeah. And when did you pick up your first drink?
Well, I smoked weed for the first time when I was 11 years old, and it was off to the races after that.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then when did you get into, like, heavy use or, like, daily use even? Like, if you're starting at 11, what's that, like, 5th, 6th grade?
Yeah, pretty much in junior high school.
Yeah.
You know, it was all about flicking school and, well, you know, skipping school and partying, you know. So it was mainly weed and alcohol at that point. A little bit of like Ritalins and
Oh, yeah.
you know, there was some acid going around.
Hell yeah.
That was in grade school?
Middle school.
Oh, middle school. I was like, Jesus.
Yeah, no, not
Acid
grade school.
in middle school?
I smoked cigarettes in grade school, but
Yeah.
not like daily pack a day.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And then when did things, like, start taking off for you with drugs and alcohol?
What do you mean by taking off? Because they kind of took off as soon as I smoked weed. You know?
Okay, so
we were
if
there.
you're smoking and drinking in middle school, what's that transition to
That progression like?
Progression, yeah.
Well, I mean, pretty much as soon as I found weed, dude, I found my salvation. You know what I mean? And then, alcohol came into play. The first time I drank, I hated. The first time I took a drink, I hated it. My buddy stole a bottle of Budweiser, a double deuce of Budweiser, and went behind his house and drank, and it was disgusting. I threw up, and I was like, ugh, never again.
Right.
And then a couple days later, somebody came by with a bottle of Mad Dog. And
Even worse.
yeah, no, it was better. It was fruit flavored. And,
there
you know
you
what I
go.
mean? It did the
Yeah.
job. I got fucked up. I think I blacked out the first time I drank. And the stories they told me that I did while I was blacked out, I was like, that's awesome. That's who I am. That's who I want to be. So that like just continued the progression. I always had lines in the sand, right? I'm not going to cross that line. I'm not going to do cocaine. I don't want to turn into a crackhead. I would skip that. You know what I mean? I would get close to it, and then I would go over the line. Then I would draw a new line in the sand, you know?
Yep.
And that's the progression through my life, you know?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so then you're in high school, drinking, smoking weed, dabbling in other things. How are you, like, supplying, like, getting your drugs and alcohol at this point? Or, like, are you working? Or what's life like kind of like at that point?
I had jobs. I worked in a restaurant as a dishwasher, plus some people put me on. So I was selling weed to, you know, I wasn't making kingpin money. I was smoking it. And then I'd end up having to pay them out of the money I made at the restaurant,
right.
too, you know? So I wasn't even, like, just making it, you know.
Yeah.
I was smoking all of it more, and that's how I've always sold drugs. Never came up.
Got to dip in that dishwasher money
Always.
to hit the re-up. Okay, and then I guess when do you start getting, like, consequences?
Early on, I think I had some consequences. It wasn't a direct result of drugs and alcohol, but it was a direct result of alcoholic thinking, right? Just bad behaviors and not caring about the law, not going to school, buddies doing bad things. My friend stole a car.
Nice.
And then they drove it around all night long, and then the next day they're like, yeah, you want to come with us? And I'm like, yeah, and I got in it. As soon as we got in it, we turned down the road, and the cops were behind us. So I got consequences for that. Put on probation, went to Dan Street for a couple days, scared the crap out of me.
What's Dan Street?
Detention home for juveniles.
Oh, okay.
It's in Summit County. But it didn't slow me down. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think I quit, smoking and drinking during that duration that I was on probation. But
How long they have you on probation?
6 months.
Oh, okay, not too bad.
Yeah.
Right.
And then that 6 months is up, and then what happens?
Just back to it.
Yeah. Okay, so then getting out of high school, where does like drinking and using take you at this point?
I'm still trying to live that same mode. But now I think, like, because I'm 18, I think I'm an adult now. I can really do whatever I want, right?
Oh yeah.
So I had an apartment, just partying there the whole time. I can't remember. I was keeping jobs here and there, Little Tykes, what other places like this, and I got kicked out of that apartment because we were too rowdy there. And just kept bouncing around from places. Rented a house in the hood. I'm like, I won't never get bothered here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If we're
Sure.
just here partying, they're not going to care about us. So,
Right.
And I was right. You know what I mean? They never came to our house. We were partying night and day. I called it a band house. We never played any music in that house. We had instruments there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah.
If there's a guitar in the corner, it's not.
It's the band house.
It's the
It's
band
a band
house.
house.
It's
There
not
were
a
cymbals too.
Yeah.
and cymbals. Yeah, it's not a crack house. It's a crack bar. Okay, so we got the band house.
The band house.
And then where do we go from here?
So I was on house arrest while I had this house too. So I wasn't allowed to leave, but people would, bring all the booze and the drugs to us. There's probably about 16 of us that live there.
Oh, wow.
And this girl comes in, and we're drinking St. Ides, right? You remember St. Ides, right? Malt liquor, the big cans. So I think they still sell them probably. She takes 2 of them, puts them in a beer bong, and does them both at one time, and I'm like, I'm in love. So we started partying. She got knocked up real quick. And then that relationship, was just super toxic the whole time. We were both getting fucked up, and then meth started coming into play really strong. So we both were doing meth and drinking and just being wild, you know. We had that kid, and this is one of my regrettable moments. She had my son. And I watched him be born, right? And then I instantly left and came to Columbus to get acid or something. And my friend's like, you want to try an Oxycontin? I'm like, sure, dude. So I did this Oxycontin. It had me in the toilet, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was laid out, and I missed signing the birth certificate. So my son doesn't have my last name till this day. And he doesn't want to change it, and I don't, I don't
Sure.
hate him for that.
Yeah.
You know what I
Right.
mean? That's his choice. I get it. We had another kid, and, we moved to another place. Like, the whole time, just ripping and running, both of us, you know? I'd be in jail, or I'd get out, you know what I mean? In and out of jail. DUIs. I got a domestic violence on her. I went to jail for a little bit for that. And then we got my dad was getting married, and I was his best man, and he lives in Randolph, so they were having the wedding and everything at his house. He has a couple acres or whatnot, and they had a full open bar. So we went there and just started getting hammered. I don't even remember I don't remember standing next to him. I don't remember the ceremony.
Damn.
But me and her were fighting, I guess, the whole night. And after everything was going down, I do remember them lighting off fireworks and stuff. That's like the last thing I remember. And what happened was I was told this, so I got into the car with her because we were fighting. We got into the car and we took off. Somebody got in their car to follow us, and like 2 miles down the road, we hit a sewer ditch, and the car went straight up and down like this and smashed into a telephone pole.
Oh shit.
I broke my back in 2 spots. Damn. She broke her neck. She broke the same bones in her neck that Christopher Reeves, Superman,
Oh
broke.
yeah.
But she broke hers outwards, so she didn't get any spinal damage. So she's still, she's not paralyzed. She's still walking,
Oh, thank God.
causing a ruckus or doing whatever she's doing today. But thank God for that. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
no doubt.
And you would think, right? You would think that would be it. This is the wake-up call, right? No. So I wake up from this instance strapped butt naked to a board, and I'm like, what's going on?
Why are you naked?
They cut all my
cut
clothes
all
off.
your clothes
Right, they
off,
cut
yeah.
all my clothes off.
Are you on your back or your stomach?
I was on my back. This would be a whole different story.
Yeah,
I'm just
no
saying,
shit.
I'm just thinking if I wake up. So I was in a similar car accident. I shattered both my femurs and I woke up on the ground. They hadn't got me on the thing yet, but I'm just thinking like you wake up from something traumatic like that, and the only thing to make it worse is I'm naked and I got my butt cheeks in the air.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So you.
Anyway.
Anyways, so you're strapped to the thing.
That's the first time anybody has ever asked that question.
Anyway.
That's why people watch this show, for these kinds of hard-hitting journalism that we bring.
Were you on your stomach?
Yes.
Right. Ass up.
Yeah. Now I got lost. So, anyways,
So you're
you're
wake
strapped
up
to the
I wake
board.
up, I'm strapped to the board, and my first question isn't like, is my wife all right? Is what's going on? My first question was, where's my Dragon Ball Z shirt at? Because I had this like really nice button-up Dragon Ball Z shirt. I was really upset about that shirt.
Right.
But then I was in the hospital, and I was so doped up. You know what I mean? I was having hallucinations. I'm missing a piece of my back. Because I shattered my T11 and my T12 vertebrae. Like they completely exploded, like the Death Star. you know? So I'm in the hospital. I'm having hallucinations. I woke up one time and I'm like, oh. I saw a guy laying next to me. I'm like, oh, I'm back in college, right? I'd never been to college. At this point in my life, I'd never been to college.
Yeah.
But I thought I was in college in my dorm. So I get up out of bed, and I walk out of the room, and I walk to the room next to me, and I'm like, hey, dude, you want a battle rap? And he's like, dude, I'm trying to live. And I'm like, oh, you're lame. And I went out to the hallway, and I'm like, man, my freaking back hurts. So I sat down in a wheelchair, and I just see all these nurses and doctors running towards me,
Yeah.
And then they were talking about, like, putting me in one of those tents so I couldn't get out of the bed.
Oh yeah.
Shit, yeah.
You're probably definitely not supposed to be walking around with that kind of injury at that point.
Yeah, no. When you're missing a piece of your back, you're not. You're supposed to lay there.
Yeah.
But after all of that stuff, they took a piece of my hip and replaced the vertebrae, fused a bunch of them together, put steel rods in there. And then the good part, the doctor comes in and says, you're probably never going to work again. I'm like, sweet, and he's like, and you're going to be on pain medication for the rest of your life. And I was like, you just gave me two like.
Did I just win this double lottery?
Right.
What's going on here?
Right.
Drugs and no work, like my prayers have been answered, is what I thought, dude.
Right.
And that's, it's another example of my thinking.
Yeah.
So that got bad. They started prescribing me Percocets, and I was getting like, big, dumb, like dildo-sized bottles.
Yeah.
Of
Oh, yeah.
Perc-10s,
Yeah.
And I knew what I wanted. I wanted oxys, right?
Yeah.
Because I'd had them, a bunch now. So I went to this, and this was before they cracked down on all the doctors.
I was going to ask what year, time
was
frame was this?
2000 after 2004. So in between 2004 and 2012 or whatever. So 2004 and 2007. So they it was way before they cracked down on the doctors. So you could go into a doctor and ask them for them.
Yeah.
There was a doctor on Brown Street, right by Dr. Bob's house. right?
Oh,
Then
no shit.
He didn't have any nurses, and it was first come, first serve, and there would be a line down the street every
Damn.
day for this doctor. And he
Sure.
would walk in, and he'd be like, he wouldn't even look at you. What are you here for? And you'd tell him what's wrong with you. You'd tell him whatever, and then he would write you the script and say, $300. Yeah.
There it is.
But I had like a more legit doctor than that, so because I was I had Medicaid and whatever insurance I had.
Oh, yeah.
So I went in there, and I said, these Percocets are working pretty good, but like my stomach's been hurting. I think like all the Tylenol and these pills are messing with me, right?
Yeah.
He's like, well, have you ever heard of Oxycontins? I'm like, no, what's those?
What are those?
He's like, well, it's the same medicine, just no Tylenol in it. He said, I think we'll try you on those. I was like, okay, I'll try it.
Turn into a goddamn award-winning actor on the spot. I love how we can do that.
Right. So my wife was going to him too, and she was getting something else. She was getting like morphine sulfates or something, and after you're already doing oxys, morphine sulfates are garbage. So
Right.
she's like, I'm just scared to ask him. I was like, I'll go with you. I went to her doctor's appointment and said, hey, I think she should be on the same thing I am. And he was like, well, I don't normally like to put people that are together on the same drug, but okay. And he did it. Yeah. So we were getting like so many Oxycontins. Plus we were getting Percocets for breakthrough pain
Yeah.
and Somas
yeah.
for I don't know why. I don't
Right.
know what a Soma does besides make you shake. You know what I mean? You ever see somebody on Somas, they're like just shaking.
Right.
It's like 8 hours of Parkinson's disease.
Yeah.
Oh,
And we're like, that's cool. I like that. I want to feel like that.
I want that.
Sign me up for that.
Right.
That's so crazy because like it's like not like that today.
At
Oh,
all.
not at all.
At
Like
all.
that was the same like
You go anywhere, they'll give you a Suboxone for anything, though. So,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know what
Yeah.
I mean?
that's true.
okay, so you and your wife are just loaded to the gills with these huge scripts, and then what? I can't imagine that lasts that long. Or,
No, they'd be gone in 2 weeks.
yeah,
Sure.
If that. We got a huge settlement for the car accident, right? So I was driving. I got charged with vehicular assault and a bunch of DUIs, and she was the victim. So we hired this lawyer to handle the insurance claims and represent me in court. So like he was fighting both sides of the thing, right?
definitely a conflict of interest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we go to court. They want to send me to prison. They want to give me at least 2 years. So we go to court, and the day I'm going into sentencing, I pled out to something. The offer, I can't remember what the offer was, but anyways, I pled out to something. So I'm going in to sign the papers, and I know it says 2 years on there, and he hands me a check for $50,000 for the insurance stuff. Damn. I was like, I'll go to prison for a little bit for this. He's like, no, you're not going to prison at all. So we go into court, and the prosecution is, doing their job. Like, this dude hurt people, blah, blah, blah. He's a danger to society, danger to blah, blah, blah. And then my lawyer gets up and was like, my wife gets up, and she gives a thing, and she talks right to the prosecutor. She's like, well, if you send my husband to prison, you're taking half of my household income away. Are you going to help me and my children survive? And the judge looks at the prosecutor and says, are you? Oh, prosecutor was like, no, sir, I cannot. And the judge was like, well, I see no reason to send this boy to prison. I'm going to give him 5 years probation, extensive probation. On the terms that he does good for a year, he can get off in a year.
Nice.
So I started that whole process, right? And this is funny, too. So I'm going to this probation. And every time I go there, I'm lit up, dude. Lit up.
Sure.
Lit up like the 4th of July, those new drone parades. That's how lit up I am. So, and I go in there and meet this probation officer, and he's like, doing the regular probation officer type shit. You got a job? No, I don't need a job. You know what I mean? Because I'm broke. My back's broke. I can't work. He's like, well, do you think you can take a piss test today? I was like, no. He's like, all right, maybe next week. And he did that through my whole probation.
What?
Yeah. And one time around the end of it, I was like, I can take a piss test today because I wanted to see. It was Portage County. You know what I mean? It was it's kind of like a little podunk county. Especially back in the early 2000s. I was like, let's see what these piss tests show up. And I asked him, I said, what shows up on these piss tests? He was like, weed, crack, like all weird. I'm like, I don't think it shows up as crack. I'm pretty sure it shows up as cocaine.
Right.
So I take this pee test and I'm on everything. You know what I mean? I'm on my prescriptions. Most of the stuff I'm allowed to be on.
Yeah.
There's some stuff I'm not allowed to be on, and me too. And I passed the piss test. I could not believe it. I didn't fail for one thing. So I don't even know what they tested for real. You know what I mean? I could have been peeing in a pregnancy test cup.
It might have been.
Yeah.
It might have been. If you're not lighting up for anything.
So I got through that probation for a year successfully with no consequences. Pretty much no consequences from the car accident besides breaking my back. You know what I mean?
Right.
It didn't seem
But if
like
you get a disability and a huge script, like at the
Right.
time for me, that would have been a wash. Yeah.
Right. So, I was still running and gunning with no consequences. Thank God my kids were not in the car.
Oh yeah.
No kidding. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, being hooked on Oxycontins, what I do, I knew it was bad at a certain point, and this happened first. So my wife found out that I was shooting up. You know what I mean? I'd crossed that line now. And she was like, you need to go to detox. And I agreed with her. You're right. Take me to St. Thomas. You guys know what St. Thomas is? It's where Ignatia Hall is. Anyways, it's history of a recovery program. So,
okay.
So she takes me there. She's like, do you want me to come in with you? I'm like, no, I'm good. I'll go. So I go in there. They also have a psych ward, not just a detox. So I go in there, and they're like, what are you doing here? I said, I'm suicidal. And they're like, okay. So they ask me all the questions or whatever, and I know what to say to make it sound like you want to kill yourself. I want to kill myself. You just say that. And that's pretty much all you need to say. But so they put me back in this room, and then they come back in there with a little cup. They said, we're going to admit you to the psych ward. And in that little cup, it had all my prescriptions.
Oh, hell
Yeah, Oxycontins and Somas. So I'm like, this is about to be a great detox. So I'm in this psych ward, and I had arrived. Again, I'm like, oh, dude, this is great. Like, I'm ordering like these great meals off this menu. I'm coloring. You know what I mean? I have my PlayStation or my PSP in here.
Oh my God.
And they're waking me up every morning like, here's your Oxycontin, Mr. Evans. I'm like, dude. You know what I mean? Like I'm Prince Harry or somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting to leave there because my wisdom teeth needed to get pulled, and they couldn't do nothing for me. So they gave me like a furlough or whatever they call it to go to the dentist. My mom picked me up. She's like, do you need to go home and get anything? I was like, yeah. So I went home, and I grabbed a needle and a spoon, and the coat. I had this Tommy Hilfiger coat where the hood rolled up into the collar.
Yep.
So I rolled that up into the collar. They searched my coat.
Yep.
Didn't find it, so I snuck a needle and a spoon into the psych ward. So every day I was shooting up the medication they were giving me.
Gosh.
Damn.
Wild.
Wild, yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
And this girl looked at me once. She's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, I'm suicidal. She's like, no, you aren't. She's like, I ate a whole bottle of Tylenol to try to kill myself. What did you do? I'm like, well, I thought about suicide. You know what I mean?
Right.
She saw right through me, you know?
Yeah.
So, but there was, that's another example of my crazy thinking. I'm sitting in the psych ward, happy as shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
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 Shooting up dope in the psych ward.
Wild.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's more. You know what I mean? Like, that's not the end of it.
Right.
Dude.
Right.
Yeah.
I ended up getting out of there. I don't know time frames exactly, right? So I got another domestic violence, and I went to prison for that. I did 6 months in Belmont, got out, no intention on staying clean.
How was that going from such a heavy load of like opiates to detoxing in prison for 6 months?
Well, I didn't, detox for 6 months, but
Well, yeah, but
it sucked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That
but
first month
I
must
think
have been-
it was a couple weeks, not even that long.
Yeah.
Oxys and stuff, the detox isn't as bad. Oxys and heroin isn't as bad as Suboxone and methadone and all that shit.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
Those
sure.
last months.
Yeah.
Right? Oxys and heroin last a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might not feel the greatest after that week, but you don't feel like you're dying. You know what I
Right.
mean? So, I was in jail for a while. I think I was pretty much done detoxing. By the time I got to prison, they sent me out real quick. And I went to Belmont. And that was crazy, excuse me. That was, I walk in there, and there's guys hitting each other with bats every single day, horseshoes, you know what I mean? Like, it was crazy down there. I didn't get involved in anything. I got super lucky and went straight to an honor dorm. I don't know why. God. You know what I mean? So I went to the honor dorm, and then I moved to the camp. And it really was just like sitting down. It wasn't that bad. I don't even have no good stories from that, besides when I was at Belmont and seeing people get hit with horseshoes and baseball bats, So I got out of prison, and I have no plan on staying clean. I didn't like, this is a problem for me, So the first person that was at my house, to greet me was my friend, and he's like all strung out looking like, you got that $20 you owe me, dude? Like, I just got out of prison, bro.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm like, yeah. Can you get any oxys? He's like, yep. I'm like, all right. So it was just right back to it, I went out with my brother one night, and I ended up smoking crack, and I smoked crack all night long. Not with my brother, but, I ended up smoking crack that night, and I had a doctor's appointment the next day. And, I blacked out first, and I woke up out of my blackout with a crack pipe in my hand. So I just continued to smoke crack, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So I went to the doctors, and I know I looked like, 3 bags of shit, dude. And, they sat me in that office for, it felt like an eternity before they called me. They're like, hey, we need you to go drop before we can give you your script. I'm like, fuck.
Oops.
Yeah, so I went and dropped, and they said, this is the last prescription we're going to give you. Here's a number for help, I didn't go get help. I went and got that script, and I went and, then heroin was just starting to come. This was just like the same time, when we took Al-Qaeda down, right? And we took over Afghanistan or whatever, and then the poppy fields went back up, and then heroin started flooding America, right? So, so it was super prevalent on the streets, and it was much cheaper than oxys, and
Oh, yeah.
it was so easy to get, and it was so much better, So I dove headfirst into all of that, got really strung out, ended up going and getting put on methadone. And it started to kind of balance my life out a little bit. I had a decent job. I gained so much weight. I think I weighed 250 pounds. You know what I mean? I'm
Holy
like,
shit.
I'm 5'5", so
Yeah.
I didn't grow up. I grew out. Couldn't see my dick and see it for,
Right.
you know what I mean? We lost contact. Mail service don't go there, so. But so I was doing all right on that, and then I was like, I'm gonna get my CDLs. My grandpa's a truck driver,
Yep.
my dad's a truck driver. So I just thought, well, I'm supposed to be a truck driver too, right? So I went and got my CDLs, and I was weaning off of the methadone. And I weaned all the way down to 1 milligram and felt fine, right? And
Oh, wow.
went out on the road and went into the worst dope sick I'd ever felt in my whole life, right? And I thought like I'd be able to know some dope out in Tampa. I couldn't find any, you know what I mean? I couldn't find any. Went to bars and everything, and couldn't find any. So I was just going through it, and I went through it I was out for 2 weeks, and I was like dope sick the whole time. And then when we got back to Ohio, I just quit and went back and got on heroin again.
Yeah.
while I was gone, my wife at the time ended up hooking up with my friend, right? Which really I set them up because when I was on methadone, I didn't want to do anything. I was going to work and I was sitting playing PlayStation, you know. And she wanted to go out and party and have fun, you know. So I'd be like, he just got into a car accident, had all kinds of money. So I was like, hey, Sean, you want to just take my old lady out and get some drinks? So they ended up bonding, right, and hooking up. So I set that up. And then when I come back and I'm like, did you cheat on me while I was gone? And she, like, gave me that look like, oh, you know. And I was shocked. I can't believe this happened. Like, I set it up, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I sent him out on dates.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So we ended up splitting up. I moved a whole bunch of savory characters into my house. I had a meth cook in the basement.
Check.
Junkie in my son's old room.
Check.
And 2 lesbian crackheads in my daughter's old room.
Check and check.
Yes. So, and they had a little kid. The 2 lesbian
wow.
girls
Oh,
did,
yeah.
which was out of a front gone wrong or something. You know what I mean? That's how she got pregnant because she was, you know, against dick. You know,
Right.
So,
Right.
so that was crazy. And I used to talk like we were just doing all kind. You know, we were cooking dope and doing heroin and just, you know, living a crazy life out of my house. And my neighbors couldn't stand me. You know.
Oh, I bet.
I was just living an insane life. Eventually, the cops came there and kicked my door in. They were looking for heroin because somebody pulled in my driveway and they pulled up on them. And these 2 dudes like took off running, you know, and they already knew who these dudes were, you know. So they towed the car out, and I was like, they're gonna be back, and they came back. I just looked out the window and saw a cop car, and them running up at the battery ring.
Yep.
And I'm like, don't bust the door. I'm like trying to open the door, and they didn't even knock. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They
just went
splintered.
straight.
They splintered the door. Put me down on the ground. Before they got there, I was in the bathroom, like cutting up all kinds of evidence and trying to throw meth trash down the toilet. You know.
Yep.
But they came in and they ended up finding something. They were looking for heroin and they ended up finding meth trash. So they got a better score than they thought they were getting. You know.
Yeah.
They charged me with manufacturing and assembly of chemicals. So they didn't find any dope though. You know what I mean? They found some trash and some stuff like cut open batteries.
Yeah.
Coffee filters. You know. But enough to charge me with it. So they said the house was, you know, a meth house. And through this process, we had to have the health department go in there and test the walls and the ceilings and everything.
Oh, yeah.
To prove that meth wasn't being cooked in the house, even though it was. So they went in there and tested the walls, the carpet, the ceilings, and found 0% traces of anything used to make methamphetamines.
Oh, wow.
I have no idea how that's possible, you know. God, again. So what they ended up doing was dropped the mandatory time off of because there was I can't remember what it's called now, but attached to that manufacturing there was a mandatory time thing on it because it was like aggravated or something like that. So they dropped that and they dropped the assembly of chemicals, and I copped out to 2 years for assembly of chemicals or / cultivation of marijuana.
Interesting.
So before you would get caught growing a plant, you would get assembly of chemicals or cultivation of marijuana would be your charge.
Interesting.
Okay.
I didn't know that.
So I went to prison, and this time I was like, man, I need to stop doing drugs.
Yeah.
But I can drink like a normal person.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't have a problem drinking.
Right.
I didn't break my back from alcohol.
No.
I don't got multiple DUIs and 2 domestic violences all while drinking. So I don't have a problem with alcohol.
Right.
Just have a problem with drugs.
Yeah.
It's so stupid. I even got I drew a Energizer bunny shaking bottles.
Oh, yeah.
And these little dudes called Crackback Kids, and I had it tattooed on my arm while I was in prison.
Gosh.
That's covered up now, but
Oh, damn it. I want to
yeah,
see it.
yeah, it's covered up. But that's how committed I was to not doing drugs. I tattooed garbage on myself, you know,
Yeah.
for a bag of Keefy coffee. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so my whole plan was like, I'm going to drink, I'm going to get a motorcycle, and I'm just going to sleep with all the women. You know what I mean?
Hell
I
yeah.
didn't have any plan of getting a job, having a stable residence, seeing my children
Right.
or anything. You know what I mean? It
Right.
was get drunk, you know.
Yeah.
So I got out. I went to a halfway house program. The first time they gave me a pass, I came back and blew numbers because I can drink like a normal person, right?
Sure.
I planned it all out. If I stop drinking at this time, I won't blow numbers when I go back.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Totally
Yeah.
normal way
Yeah.
to
Right.
think about that.
Normal
Right.
people do that, right?
Yeah.
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 So, and I was getting, like, in that halfway house, I was getting ready to, like, I had them all manipulated so I didn't have to do, like, any IOP or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came back and blew numbers. They're like, you're doing intensive IOP now, you know?
Right.
So I made it through that halfway house, and I got out. I didn't drink anymore while I was in there. And I got out, and then the first day, I went to the bar. Started drinking like a normal person, right? You go there as soon as you get up, and you spend all your money, and then you bum drinks from other people.
Just
and
like a
then,
normal person.
Like a normal person, right? And that lasted until somebody else had something. You know what I mean? Somebody had some
Sure.
meth. You want to do some of this? Well, drunk me likes to do drugs. Sober me didn't want to do drugs anymore.
Right.
Drunk me doesn't care.
Right.
So I got right back into it. Now every day I'm doing the same thing. I'm over on the south side of Akron in a basement, you know, doing meth and heroin and cooking bottles and playing with guns and, you know, still going to see my caseworker this whole time too and taking piss tests, and they're going, "You're doing a good job," and I'm like, "I'm doing a good job," you know.
Yeah. Right.
And then I go in one day and she's like, "Hey, says here that the last 12 piss tests that we've given you, you've failed for pretty much everything we test for." And like I looked at her shocked.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Must
Like,
be a mistake.
Yeah,
Run the numbers again. Double check.
Right.
Yeah.
You need to send that out.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Right.
All 12 of them. 12 of them are
12 in
wrong.
a
Yeah.
row.
The 13th one would be.
Yes.
You know, so she's like, and I started doing the fake crying. I don't want to go back to prison.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, "You're not going to prison. You need help. You need to go to treatment." So I was like, all right. So she sent me to a treatment. I won't say the name of the place, but it's helped start the journey of recovery for me.
The Mental Defectives podcast is brought to you by Milligram's new EP, More Is Always Better. 6 electrifying tracks available on all streaming platforms.
Went to this treatment place, and in my mindset, I just got, you know, I've been in and out of jail and prison, so I'm like, this is just another time I got to do, and I'm just going to go in here and bit and get it over with, right? So I go in there and, you know, I'm doing the old poor me's and all of this and whatnot, you know, playing the victim card,
Yeah.
you know, how they did me wrong, you know. And they just listened to me, gave me coffee and cigarettes and just listened to me, you know. I could have not done anything for the first week so I could dry out or whatever, and something in me was like, just go to this class. Let's just get this started, you know. And this guy comes in, and I'll say this little backstory real quick. I had a huge God problem because of religion. I grew up Holy Rolling Baptist. Like my grandparents, like would dump holy water, you know, splash holy water
Yeah.
in my face to rebuke the demons. And,
Oh, wow, yeah.
You know, and when I was 8 years old, I went and got saved, and then the same day I got molested. So that put a big rift between me
Oh,
and
yeah.
God.
That's got to just fuck with
yeah.
your head as a little kid. Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't like, and I still believed in God, but the only way to God was through religion. Well, I don't need God because I ain't going to religion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So anyways, back to the present part of the story. So I'm in this class, and this guy comes in and he says, do you have problem with God because of religion. Well, separate the two because religion and spirituality have nothing to do with each other. And something clicked in my brain that day to open the door a little bit so I could peek through and see what else was in there. So that was a huge turning point for me. So I started listening to these people. I never listened to anybody my whole life. And it got me to where I was. So I was like, you know what? I learned in prison, I do well when people tell me what to do. When I had a structure in the joint, I did all right, and I felt okay. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's sad to say, and I thought maybe I was institutionalized because the happiest I had been in years was sitting in prison. Richland, where I did the majority of my time, was not like Belmont. It was you wake up in the morning, I'm in Richland, you get to see the castle from Shawshank Redemption, and you're like, hey, good morning. Good morning, Andy. And like people it was weird. I mean, there were still like gangs and shit doing stupid shit, but it wasn't to the extent of like Belmont was. They had like, you could be in a band. They had studios.
Oh, wow. Damn.
Not to record, but they had studios where
still.
Right. They had Nintendo Wii competitions every weekend.
Damn.
You know what I mean? So people were playing Pokemon, and you didn't want to hang out with those guys, but they were playing Pokemon and Magic and a lot. It was just like a weird camp.
Yeah.
But I learned structure in there, right? That's what I'm getting at. I learned the structure, and I was happy in there. You know what I mean? Not happy because, I was locked up, so I still had that, I can't leave. But I was sober and I was happy. Yeah. I was clean, whatever you want to call it, right? Yeah. So when I'm in treatment, something clicked like, hey, man, you do really well when you listen to other people. So I just started listening to them. They're like, hey, you need to get a sponsor. So I got a sponsor. And my sponsor's like, you need to get a home group. So I got a home group, And I just started doing the things. Guy that was sponsoring me started coming up to the treatment center like 2 or 3 times a week, and we were getting into some literature, right?
Yeah.
So, and we just started diving into recovery. By the time I got out, I was ready on my journey to start, making doing the amends process and whatnot. And, I was really feeling it. I was really feeling the recovery path, and I was like engulfing in it. The treatment center started an outreach program. I call myself Patient Zero because they asked me when I was in there. They're like, hey, we're going to start this thing. I'm like, what is it? They're like, we have no idea. Do you want to join? And I was like, sure, sign me up.
Hell yeah.
And then we just started going and doing service work at churches. We used to feed people underneath the Y Bridge in Akron, and hand out needed stuff, toiletries and soap, whatever, know. And we'd go to different churches and help them we'd paint and feed people, stuff like that, right? And I found great joy in that. More joy than any paycheck I'd ever earned. No doubt. So that was a big part of me learning about service, right? Because it's, service will keep you sober, right?
Hell yeah.
Not by itself, but it'll,
but it helps.
It's a part of it. So, and then being involved in that where it's just a bunch of people trying to stay sober together, and I didn't have nothing going on, I wasn't working. I had just gotten out of treatment. I was still weary about going back to work. I'm like, I got this messed up back, right? Mm-hmm. But I was like, you know what? I need a job. So I'm going to get a job. I got a job delivering. I was in treatment with a guy who his dad owned a bunch of Jimmy John's. So he's like, I'll get you a job at Jimmy John's, Kent State,
Nice.
Yeah. So I went out there. I'd got my license back and got in a car. And I went out there and got a job. And I was delivering sandwiches, like 34 years old, with a bunch of college students. Pretty humbling. You know what I mean?
No doubt.
The oldest dude in there. My managers are 20 years old, yelling at me. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I went in there with the same stuff they were telling me in the rooms. Show up early. You know what I mean? Be a service when you're here. So I took that same stuff and I did it there, and they just kept, hey, you want to be a shift leader? Hey, you want to be a manager? And then I ended up being an assistant GM in Middleburg Heights. So,
Nice.
what I was like, well, this is far, so I'm going to move to Parma, right? So I moved out to Parma, and I didn't tell you I picked up a girl at this treatment center too.
As we
Oh,
do.
Yeah.
There it is.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that I forgot about that. So I picked this girl up, and I thought, they tell us the things like 2 sickies don't make a welly, and we're like,
Right.
that's stupid. But I was for real in it, you know what I mean? And she pretended. I'm not trying to like tell her story or her side of things, but that's really what it was. So, we had a bunch of good times. I'm not going to say we didn't, but it turned into, she was running around doing whatever she was doing, but I was blinded by it. I'm like, no. People would tell me, I'd be like, no, that's not true.
Right.
I'd be able to tell.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we'd be on again, off again. I moved out there, and then I ended up moving her out there, and I went to some meetings, and I went to one meeting, and like when I'm new, I get like this face, I get my prison face, my resting bitch face or whatever. I'm out there smoking cigarettes. Nobody's talking to me. Nobody's saying, hey, I'm, you're new here,
Right.
And I'm like,
Just chain smoking and mean
Yeah,
mugging everyone
right,
that walks in. And why is no one approaching me?
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like, these aren't real, is what my brain's
yeah.
saying. So I went to another one in Old Brooklyn or whatever it is in Cleveland, and some guy came up to me and did the thing. Hey, you're new. If you ever need a ride to a meeting, I'm like, a ride to a meeting? I was insulted.
Oh,
So the thing I was thinking from the other meeting, this guy does, and now I'm insulted.
Yep.
Don't you know I got 3.5 years sober? I don't need a ride from you. I'm never coming back here again. I was just working myself out of the rooms,
Yeah.
because I was getting pretty miserable with this girl, and I was just working a lot, 60 hours a week, and I was away I wasn't talking to my sponsor. I didn't have any more sponsees. I wasn't going to any meetings or anything like that. So I got miserable, and I ended up kicking her out, but I was just sitting in this room. I was going to work and sitting in this attic apartment, just
Not a good recipe.
All bad.
yeah. When you're sitting there with yourself, you're sitting there with the biggest idiot you know. You know what I mean? So I stayed dry for a while. So that guy ended up selling those Jimmy Johns and then offered me the same job in Medina at a barbecue restaurant. So I like how you said something about barbecue. So so I go out there and I end up buying a house out there. And I was still lonely. So I brought this girl back, right? And then she's doing whatever she's doing. I kick her out, and then I go through a thing where I'm like, I used the program to trick me into drinking, right? So I'm like, I need to just accept her, right? Acceptance is the answer to all my problems.
Right.
So I say this to myself, I just need to accept her for who she is, right? And if I love her, I just accept her for who she is, and that's, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I do that, and we, start hanging out, and I go and pick up a 6-pack on the way. And I crack open this beer, and that beer tasted so freaking good. It tasted like freedom. You know what I mean? And that night was great. That night was fun. We had a great time. The next night wasn't. The next day after that wasn't. Then they had some dope, and I did it right away,
Yeah.
And then it was off to the races again. And then me and her off to the, that lasted about 4 months. And I was like, I need to go get help. So I went to a detox. And I was like, I just need to go to detox, and then I know what to do. You know what I mean? I got to get back in the rooms. So I went to detox, but what they don't tell you about detox is that you need detox for the shit that they put you on in detox, right? So
Oh, yeah.
they give you, Suboxone and all kinds of crap, dude. So I get out, and I'm feeling all right. When I left, then I started feeling shaky on the way home, right? And I'm driving through Akron. I went to detox in Youngstown, so I'm driving back to Medina. So you got to go through Akron to get to Medina. And I'm driving and there's a spot like downtown Akron at Copley Road, right? So I'm driving. I'm like, just make it past Copley Road and you'll be all right, you know? And I'm saying this out loud as I'm turning down Copley Road.
Right.
And then picking up the phone and calling dude, you know? So I went on another bender for another couple weeks. And then I was like, I need to go to treatment. I can't just go to detox. So I went to treatment and I was broke. You know, I already have issues with, you know, self-worth and anxiety and, you know, depression and all these things, right? So that's amplified, especially when you've been out, you know. And then the 4 months I, you know, gave away pretty much everything but my house. And that was about to go too. So I'm dealing with all this guilt, this shame, and this remorse, right?
Yeah.
And it's super prevalent inside of me. I got the worst, you know, feelings ever. And I'm in this treatment and I hate it. Wasn't fun like the first time I went to treatment. I was completely more broken this time, I think, you know. And every day I'd have to tell myself, just stay today, dude. You know, because I knew if I left, I'd get high, and I really didn't want to, but I did want to. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
But I really didn't want to, but I really did want to.
Yeah.
You know?
Such a fucked up place to be,
it's
but
the
like we've
worst.
all been there. And it's just like,
Well, because I knew it would fix at least that right now.
Right.
yeah.
It wasn't going to fix anything else, but it would fix this right now.
Yes.
You know? So I stayed, and I was doing everything that they were suggesting us to do, all the things, you know, and just nothing was like right. Nothing was working for me. And this lady comes in to do a guided meditation. And I don't know how you guys are about meditating, but I got squirrels running around in my brain, dude. You know what I mean? They got like nuts hanging off their, you know, their tails, and they're both chasing each other around trying to figure it out. So I can't read a book unless I read it out loud. I have to read it out loud, or else I'll get 14 chapters in and be like, I don't even know what this book is about.
Right.
You know?
Sure.
So I'm doing this guided meditation, and they're playing like, you know, like Arabian music with like finger symbols, and there's a voice that guides you. Think the color blue. Think the color red. You know, those types of things. So it was very helpful for me to focus on nothing. You know what I mean? Because every time my mind would start to go left or right, like it would take me back.
Bring you right
straight.
back. Yep.
Yeah, so during this time I had what I seen, I don't know, you call it a vision or whatever you call it, like it was me standing in a battlefield. The ground was covered in dead bodies. I'm standing on top of the dead bodies, blood going down my chest, a severed head in my hand. The sky was red and the sun is even redder, right? And then it ended and I got freaked out. I'm like, fuck, I am fucked. I awoke this demon and I am fucked. Right. So I told the lady that was running it, and she looked at me like, and I was like, yep, I'm fucked.
Right.
You know? So later on that day, I was talking to one of the RSs at the treatment place, and he's like, don't think about the visuals. Think about what it represents. Think about, I mean, it represents you being victorious in a great battle, overcoming so much, you know? And right there, all those nasty feelings just went away. So this is the only thing I can, this is another spiritual experience I had in my life other than the first time I smoked weed, because all of those feelings went away when I was a kid too, you know?
Yeah.
Because I had those feelings. I didn't touch on that, but,
Sure.
you know, I always felt like the grass was always greener, pretty much. So this time, that feeling went away. And I woke up the next day and I felt good. And I stayed there a whole nother day. And I woke up the next day and I felt good. And I was like, all right, it's time for me to go home. So I went up to an RS and I was like, hey, dude. He's like, what's up? And I was like, you can go ahead and give me my keys and my wallet and stuff. I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here, you know. And he's, you know, trying his best to get me to stay. And you know how we can manipulate things. He goes, you can get sober anywhere. And I was like, my point exactly, dude. Give me my shit. I'm going home, you know. So I got in my car. I was in Youngstown again. Got in my car, made it through Akron, made it past Copley Road, got to Medina, and I went to a meeting that day. And I'm not going to say I went in there and shaking everybody's hands. You know, I still stood there and smoked cigarettes. Like, don't fucking talk to me, you know?
Yeah.
Yep.
But I went every single day. And I just kept going until I started to slowly talk to people. And then I finally got another sponsor. And then, you know, just getting back into my recovery.
Hell yeah. And then what's a little bit of like what life's like for you today? Because I know you're married now, and then what are you?
Yeah, so today there's a lot of blessings that are in my life, right? I've gotten to I have gotten to go into the jail and talk to guys in there. And I had like full reign of Medina County Jail, pretty much. Like, they buzz me through any door, except for the women's side. I don't have no business going in there.
Right.
But, I could go in and talk to anybody that was in there. Like, if you went to jail, I could go in there and be like, hey, I need to talk, and they would bring you down and I would talk to you. Or I would go to your pod. And that was really cool. I'd have meetings and I'd do one-on-ones with guys and just be able to share my experience with them, I do a group on Saturdays called Motorcycle Rehab, where we bought a bike from a junkyard. It's a Yamaha XS650. It's a 79, right? We bought this bike from a junkyard. It had spark. The engine ran, and we stripped it down, and we cut some stuff off. We welded some stuff on, and we've been steadily working on it for like 2 years. So every Saturday, just everybody gets to come and put hands on it, right?
That's sick.
That sounds like a blast.
You would fucking
it's
I would
love
love
that.
that.
Yeah, how
You
did
gotta-
the
that is cool as fuck.
motorcycles get into the picture?
That was part of my original sobriety, or my original plan
The
getting
plan.
out of prison, right? The motorcycle.
The
So I've
motorcycle.
always wanted a motorcycle.
Yeah.
I could just never choose a motorcycle over drugs. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So I finally got one, and then started getting into it a lot more. You know what I mean? Like diving into the culture, then starting to work on stuff a little bit. And really wanting to learn. So I didn't know I was doing this. So my friend came to me and was like, "Hey, do you want to start like this group? Like, I'll come and teach classes, and we'll have a class plan." You know what I mean? Like a
Yeah.
teacher would come in and be like, "Today we're going to work on carburetors and blah blah
Right.
blah."
Yeah.
So that's what the idea was at first, right? And then he brings the bike, and we get in there and we just start hacking away at it. And he's like, "Well, you guys just did like 3 months worth of what I had planned out." Because we, we just went in on it.
Yeah.
We tore it down in like 2 hours.
Hell yes.
So it just became like, let's show up and build this bike. Hey, do you want a safe place to come and build a bike? Well, this is it. You know what I mean? And we're going to sit in this room. We're going to talk about whatever we want to talk about. And we're going to work on this bike, We've thought about actually recording it.
That sounds
But-
like heaven to me.
Yeah, yeah. You
I was gonna say I started to build a bike for that reason. Like
Yeah.
I just wanted to learn, and the only way I'm gonna learn is by doing it.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. Like, I started this group to
Yeah.
teach people how to build motorcycles. But somebody's like, "You started this group to teach you how to build motorcycles." I was like, "Yeah, I guess you're
yeah.
right."
We're all gonna learn something.
right.
So, I mean, I've learned a
That's
lot
so
of things.
cool, man.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah, I mean, everything down to it, like, we've sent it out for powder coating because we don't have
Sure.
ovens to powder coat,
Yeah.
right? And the tank, somebody donated their time to paint the tank, but pretty much everything else on the bike, like we've all had our hands on it. Respoking the wheels, we've tore everything down and rebuilt everything back up. It's getting pretty close to completion.
Sweet.
Hell yeah.
Real sweet.
Is there a plan for the bike once it's completed?
Yeah, we're gonna raffle it off. It's probably gonna be, the plan is May. So
Okay.
Oh,
the first week of Bike Week in Sandusky. So I do Motorcycle Rehab does a blessing of the bikes every year. So this will be the third blessing of the bikes. We plan on raffling the bike off then, and then having a nice little ride out to Sandusky Bike Week, and then ride back and have a barbecue at HRC.
Hell yeah.
Sounds like a great time.
And then Ellis, what advice would you have for someone looking to get sober?
Well, I mean, if somebody wants to get sober, right? Because you got to want it. It's not for people who need it. It's for people who want it. There's all kinds of different avenues and resources these days. You just have to pick up the phone and call somebody, and then do it. Do that one little thing, because that one little thing can turn into the next thing.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. You got to do the one little thing that person says on the phone, whether it's go to a meeting, go to treatment. You know what I mean?
A little bit of willingness
All right.
goes a long way. What advice would you have for somebody getting into motorcycling?
Get on a bike.
Just get on a bike.
Just get on a bike, right? Like I bought my first bike is the bike I have now, a 09 Fat Boy, right? So
nice.
Everybody's like, and I'm short, so like I sat on a lot of bikes, dude. I sat on Sportsters, I couldn't reach the ground. I'm like, this is a girl's
tall.
bike, and I can't reach the ground with this, you know. So
Did you say it's a girl bike?
that's what people say.
Motherfucker.
I love Sportsters. I don't say that. I think Sportsters are super underrated. Yeah, because they're like they're the bike that you chop. You
That's
know
what
I
I'm
mean?
doing. Yeah.
Right. So
Right.
Oh, that's the one you're working on as a Sportster?
Yeah.
look, I love Sportsters, and I like Softails, but you know, I like all bikes. There's not a bike I don't really like. I'm not really a fan of crotch rockets and shit, but you know, I make fun of old dudes on their baggers, on their Me Too's.
Oh, we all make fun of each other.
Right. We all make fun of each other.
That's part of it.
But yeah, so I bought this bike and I just got on it. They're like, you need to take a class. I'm like, no, I don't. I got on it. I'm like, I've drove semi trucks. I've drove stick
I can
shift
figure this out.
everything.
Yeah.
I can do this. You know? So I got on it. I dumped it once, and I wasn't riding. I was at a stoplight, kind of on an incline, and it stalled, and I got wobbly, and it dropped.
Yep.
I went and they're like, you need to take the class. I'm like, no, I don't. So I went to the DMV and signed up for the course. And all the guys are like, how much do you practice? I'm like, I don't know. I ride. They're like, how much have you practiced the course? I'm like, I've never seen this course.
Yeah.
I've never even looked at it.
Right.
You know? And they're like, oh, well, you got it. And they're trying to give me all this advice and stuff. And the first guy goes, and the first obstacle, he dumped the bike, so he failed. The other guy that been practicing since 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, he did something else and he failed. And then I got up there and I just passed it with ease. It's just because I was riding, you know what I mean?
Right.
I was out on the roads and
for
a year before I went and tried to take the thing. So I don't know. Yeah, that. Just get a bike and ride it, man.
Just get on there and ride.
Yeah,
I dig it.
And then the motorcycle rehab thing, can anyone go to that?
Yes.
And then how, if so, for people listening or watching, like they want to check out motorcycle rehab, how do they get to be a part of that?
So in Medina, 200 Highland Drive, every Saturday at noon.
200 Highland Drive every Saturday at noon, Medina,
Saturday at
Ohio.
noon. Right. We're in the garage.
Hell
yeah.
yes. Hell yes.
I dig it.
I do too.
Well, Ellis, thank you so much for coming on today and making the trip in the freezing cold. Last thing before we get out of here, you were telling me that your favorite part of The Empire Strikes Back is when Spock tells Captain Kirk to live long and prosper. Do you still stand by that?
So you want to get beat
It's
up
the Mental
on your
Defectives podcast. It's Milligram, Jerry with G. Ellis is here. Bike Rehab, Medina, Ohio. Go check it out. We'll see you next time. Peace.